What should have been a peaceful new chapter in Nancy Dorison's life quickly unraveled into a nightmare. After moving into a small apartment in Wolcott, Connecticut, Nancy expected to enjoy her independence for the first time in years. She had always dreamed of one day owning a quaint house surrounded by trees with a garden bursting with herbs and flowers. But for now, this modest apartment would have to do. It was cozy, the rent was affordable, and the landlord, Mr. Hollard, seemed pleasant enough. At first, things went smoothly. Mr. Hollard agreed to change the rent due date to the 8th, so it matched Nancy's pay schedule. Their conversations were brief and polite, and Nancy was already picturing a row of potted herbs on her kitchen windowsill. But the dream quickly began to dissolve. It started with an unexpected knock at the door. When she opened it, Mr. Hollard pushed his belly into the doorway and tried to step inside. The excuse? He just wanted to check on how she was settling in. Nancy immediately felt uneasy. She stood her ground and reminded him firmly that he couldn't enter without notice. His eyes narrowed, and the friendly tone vanished. He launched into a bitter rant about terrible tenants he'd had in the past, and insisted he wouldn't let anyone take advantage of him again. Nancy was shaken, but hoped this was just a one-time incident. It wasn't. Just a few days later, she heard the front door creak open. Shocked, she ran to find Mr. Hollard already stepping into her home, using his own key, completely uninvited. When she confronted him, he claimed neighbors had complained about smelling smoke. Nancy reminded him of how inappropriate and frightening it was for a man to break into the home of a young single woman. But he didn't care. It became clear to her that this wasn't going to stop. She needed a plan. Unfortunately, giving notice and moving out wasn't an option. As a new renter with limited funds and a new job, she couldn't afford to leave on a whim, so she did what she could. She documented everything. Every knock, every excuse, every attempted entry. She wrote everything down and began filming their interactions. Still, the stress wore on her. She felt constantly unsafe in her own home, never knowing when he might come in again. Then came the moment that pushed everything over the edge. One morning, while cleaning and listening to jazz on her headphones, Nancy noticed a strange hole in the wall. It was small and easy to overlook, but something about it made her pause. When she got closer, her stomach turned. Inside the hole was a tiny camera. Her landlord had been spying on her. She collapsed onto the sofa, shaking. Wrapped in a blanket, she wanted to dial 911 immediately, but she hesitated. What if it was her word against his? What if he had time to remove the camera before police could get there? She needed solid evidence. That's when she called a close friend. He wasn't a tech genius, but he knew enough. Under the pretense of hanging out and watching movies, he helped her trace the IP address of the camera. It led straight back to Mr. Hollard. Armed with that, Nancy called the police. Just as she expected, Hollard denied everything. He even had the audacity to accuse Nancy of causing problems. Worse, he pulled out a version of the rental contract with a clause stating he could enter the apartment without notice. Nancy was livid, but she kept calm. She knew she had her own copy of the lease. And when she checked, it confirmed what she suspected. That clause wasn't in hers. She now had a second piece of solid evidence. The following weeks were grueling. She barely slept. Her anxiety was through the roof. Searching the rest of the apartment, she discovered 3 more hidden cameras. By the time her court date arrived, she had a mountain of evidence. Standing before the judge, she opened her laptop and hit play. Footage rolled, showing the cameras, the IP addresses, and side-by-side comparisons of the 2 contracts. Mr. Hollard turned ghost white. The courtroom was dead silent. Even the judge looked visibly disturbed. As the case unfolded, it became clear that Hollard had not only violated Nancy's privacy, but had manipulated legal documents to cover it up. The judge called the situation a disgusting abuse of power. Hollard was found guilty and sentenced to jail. The settlement Nancy received was more than she ever expected, enough for a down payment on a small home. Her garden dream would become a reality much sooner than she thought. But Nancy wasn't the only one who stood up to a nightmare landlord. Across the ocean in London, another woman, Sandy Batchelor, was facing a different kind of horror. A young Scottish actress from Kinross, Sandy was living in a rundown house in Catford. As a freelancer with unstable income, she had taken what she could afford even if the place had rats in the backyard, broken appliances, and damp, dingy walls. Despite the condition of the home, Sandy worked hard to improve it. She cleaned, painted, decorated, and even planted flowers in the garden. She was the perfect tenant. That's why it was especially painful when her landlord asked her to do something disgusting. During the pandemic, Sandy's income dried up. She fell behind on rent. One day, out of the blue, her landlord messaged her with a proposition and inappropriate request in exchange for keeping her home. Sandy was heartbroken. She refused, and soon after, she was evicted. As she packed her things and moved them into storage, her landlord messaged again. This time, he asked her to film a video tour of the property for future tenants. Sandy was beyond disgusted. After everything he had done to her, now he wanted her help to fill the room she was being forced to vacate, so she made a video, but not the kind he wanted. Sandy recorded a brutally honest, sarcastic video tour. She pointed out the mold, the broken fixtures, the rat problem, and the terrible condition of the home. She didn't hold back. Then she sent the video to her friend Michael for a laugh. Michael, who was active on Twitter, posted it on his account. What happened next was something neither of them expected. The video went viral. Within hours, thousands of people were sharing, commenting, and laughing at the absurdity and rage in her voice. Her brutally honest review struck a chord with tenants everywhere. People rallied behind her, praising her courage and calling out landlords who took advantage of vulnerable renters. Despite crashing on a friend's couch with her belongings in storage, Sandy's life began to turn around. The viral video gave her exposure. Talent scouts and comedy agents reached out. Her natural humor, confidence, and charisma got her new roles, gigs, and even a regular spot at a comedy club. She had turned her pain into something powerful. A month later, Sandy had enough money to move into a new apartment. It was cleaner, brighter, and safer. She had work, stability, and freedom. Looking back, that awful ultimatum and the betrayal by her landlord had pushed her to a breaking point, but it also sparked a new beginning. Both Nancy and Sandy were pushed into terrifying, unfair situations by landlords who abused their power. But they didn't let fear or humiliation silence them. They fought back with evidence, with creativity, with truth. And in the end, they didn't just survive, they thrived. Sometimes the darkest moments shine the brightest lights, and in both cases, justice and dignity prevailed.